out to people, you'll be surprised how much people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And
Hey, what's up, you guys? It's your boy Juju, and welcome back to the 1% of Juju podcast, where we teach you the practical steps to live your life like the 1%. As always, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast because you can see we are doing our first live interview, and this is very exciting because we have a lot more exciting things coming up in the podcast. But for today, let's get to introducing our lovely guest because I'm really excited to have the conversation with you today. So you guys can see obviously in the title what we're going to talk about. But Rob, welcome to the podcast, man.
thank you, Julian. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah.
Can do a quick introduction of myself.
Go ahead, do that.
I am born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. Just moved here to Toronto 4 months ago now, 3.5 months ago. It's been a wild ride. We've been on lockdown the whole time, so haven't been up
What
to
a time to be alive.
haven't been up to a whole lot. But yeah, I'm happy to talk kind of about my journey through tech. I'm a relatively recent grad, so kind of have been through a lot of interviews over the last 3-4 years and been trying to navigate my journey in the corporate world and kind of set my career for what it's going to be over the next few years. So
Yeah.
excited to
And
chat.
tell us what do you do for work right now?
Yeah, right now I'm in software sales. Before that, I was doing tech consulting at 2 different companies, and before that, a role in customer success. So
Nice.
have had little stints in kind of a few different areas within the tech industry, and have kind of landed now on a sales role, which is ultimately what I've wanted to do. So happy to
Nice.
talk about kind of any of those, 3 different areas of tech, and my experiences in them.
Cool. And I'm here pretending that I don't know him, but like Rob and I work together, so like we know each other like really, really well. But I'm interested in knowing. So you said that you ultimately sales is what you wanted to do. Like, did you always intend to kind of be in the corporate world, or like when did that start in like your journey? Like whether it's like high school, college, or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my experience in university, probably very different than a lot of people. I didn't really want to be in college, to be honest. My parents sort of forced me to go. Spent my first 2 years there, was just doing general studies, didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Kind of pivoted towards business. I knew like this is around 2015, 2016, 2017, and you start to see in the news like everything that's going on in the tech world. The Googles, the Facebooks are massive at this point and just keep on blowing up. So I kind of pivoted towards information systems, and ended up kind of my first role in tech was in a consulting role, and always knew I have family that has been in sales, my brother and my dad. That sales is something that I would want to do. I knew there was a lot of money in it for sure, which is something that definitely motivates me.
Yeah.
But also I feel like naturally, like the talking to people, the relationship side of technology is something that I wanted to pursue.
No, that's cool, and I love the fact that you speak about the money because I feel like it's kind of like a taboo subject. I mean, that's why I started this podcast, but it's kind of a taboo subject that people are like, oh, I'm afraid to say. I started saying that in all interviews now, like, oh yeah, why do you want this role? Well, the big part is the money, and like I'm not like I don't shy away from it anymore. But today we're gonna speak specifically and kind of giving advice to people on how to land and like couple tricks that they can have like to be successful in the corporate world, because I mean a lot of people on my podcast have been asking me to make more content about that because my content is often very business focused, but I think that for a lot of people they're like, well, I don't want to go into business by myself, but like you can also have a lot of success in the corporate world. But like for yourself, like what would you say has made you successful in your time in the corporate world, because you've been able to have a lot of success and you're fairly young, aren't you?
Yeah, I am young. Age shall
Oh
not
yeah,
be
yeah,
named.
we're not mentioning the age.
I keep my age a secret. Somewhere between the age of 18 and like 35.
Yeah,
so somewhere in that range.
somewhere in there.
But I mean, it's a lot of things. I'm obviously like early in my career, so I don't see myself as super successful yet. But I guess kind of when I pivoted towards wanting to do this, I was, I guess, about 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and starting from scratch. Like I didn't know anything really about technology besides what you see in the news articles. And I think a big thing for me was just getting out there, trying to meet people. I mean, this was before COVID or any of that stuff. So like trying to get in front of the right people. I was applying to so many places. I was trying to talk to so many people about their experiences. And I guess really just how I started it off was looking at those people who were above me, 1 or 2 years, 3 years, some even like, 10 years ahead in my career, and trying to start those conversations, because that's been probably the number one indicator or the number one key for me in being successful is so many people have helped me along the way.
Man, that's so powerful. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit more about like the networking aspect, but what would you say, like from what you've seen so far, like do you think that there's a correlation between like what people think makes them successful in the corporate world? Because I'm starting to see that everything, even like as you go to school, right? Like you kind of thought like, well, if you sit there by yourself and you do a really, really good job at your homework, let's say, or in this test, well, you'll be successful in school, right? Well, you get in the corporate world and you kind of realize like, oh shoot, that's not how it works. Like you can do a great job, be almost the best at your craft.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that network and you don't know people, or you don't have certain intangibles, or you don't know how to market yourself, whatever it is, like, are you seeing the same things? Or like, what are you seeing like from a misconception standpoint of what you thought may be going in and what it is now?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that step one is understanding the role that you want to do. Like, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Like, you need to understand not just the role, but I guess kind of what everyone else is doing and what they're striving to do as well. So certainly, like any new role that I've taken on, the first 3-6 months, I'm really diving into what my role is supposed to be and kind of what is expected of me. And I think from there, like, you find out that, ultimately you're in charge of your own career. So you're the one that needs to reach out to people that are way ahead of you in your career and ask them the question so that they're aware that you're trying to do this in the future, and that will help you out down the line. So I think that's the biggest misconception is people think that they just got to do the role. But at the end of the day, like, you need to know that nobody is really concerned about your career as much as they're concerned about their own career.
100%.
So you need to get out there, meet people, and just make sure that you are intentional in what you are trying to achieve, and it'll get you there a lot faster.
Man, that's so good. One thing I wanted to share is like a couple of weeks ago, we were in Atlanta and we had lunch with one of our AVPs. And I don't even know if you mentioned, you noticed when he said that, because I noticed it actually after having a conversation with another RVP in our company, that I was just asking them, like, how'd you get to the point where you're at? And every single time when you talk to those very senior people, they'll always tell you, like, oh, like, there's someone in my network that I knew that was here, and they thought that I would be a good fit for this job, and they kind of called me over when there was this opening and stuff like that. And you start realizing, like, hold on, that you talk to more and more people, and you start realizing, like, that's that's kind of like a common theme or whatever. But outside of, like, how do you think that you navigate that? Because there's also different size companies, right? Like, we work in a very large company. How do you navigate in the corporate world, like as a new grad or someone that maybe is going through a career transition? How would you think that people may want to navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like I essentially, pretty much graduated into the start of the pandemic a little bit before. So I didn't have a job at the time, which nobody was hiring. You're getting closer to
revealing your age
now. I could have been a really old grad, you don't know that. But yeah, I mean, like, during that time, there's nobody hiring. Like, no matter, like, even though tech was, like, still kind of going up, they weren't hiring. There's hiring freezes everywhere. So I had nothing to do. So I was just kind of sitting, like, at home by myself, trying to figure out how do I position myself ahead of other people. And there's a million grads looking for jobs. And the biggest thing was just reaching out to people. You'll be surprised how much people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And just, it's crazy. I'll share the message that I send on LinkedIn later, and just like, they're just willing to help you. And the game has changed too. It's no longer you have to go meet them for a coffee. You just have to have a laptop in 15 minutes and 2 or 3 questions prepared. And that's kind of how I guess I navigated when I graduated. I was just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and having quick conversations. And I was never like a person who went to the networking events
Right,
in university.
right.
I don't even like the word. Like it's just I never did those things. I'm more happy to do them now, I think, than I was before. But I would have been nervous about those types of things. Even when I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn, like I was nervous about, having those meetings, and I would prep for them. But over time, you just start to do them more and more, and you'll find like people are just willing to help you out.
That is so true, especially like for myself. Like I love talking about myself. So like if you're out there and you want someone to talk to, like just reach out. But like I want you to talk a little bit more about that specifically on like how, because like what would you ask people for, like, and because you're saying, okay, yeah, I would ask people, and people love to talk about themselves. So would you reach out and ask them for a favor, or would you just simply ask to like learn more about what they're doing and things like that?
I should have pulled up this message before. I will find it. I'll reach down in the bottom of my LinkedIn and try to find the message that I would send. But essentially, on LinkedIn, you can send, I think, like 200 characters or something like that. So if I was looking at a role, I would just send, a quick note, say, "Hi, Dave. I'm looking into doing this role at this company. I see that you've had some success there. I would love to chat about, your role and what you see successful people are doing in that role." Like something along those lines. Very short, simple. Say thank you in there a couple times. And I remember for my customer success job that I had worked, that was my first one out of university. I think I did that with 5 people, and 4 of them got back to me.
Oh, wow.
And I talked to all 4 of them.
Yeah.
And then by the time I had my first interview, the hiring manager was like, "Oh, we've heard so much good things about you," which is crazy. I mean, like that is before even meeting them, going into that interview. And that's what kind of puts you above the rest. And it's so simple to do.
That's crazy. I never thought about that. I'm gonna start doing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm never leaving my job. But yeah, no. That's definitely good advice, because I think that like I definitely go and try to speak with people, but I've never really thought about it from like a mindset of like what that could lead to, and like how people are actually already speaking about you. Like, oh yeah, I actually know this person. Like you guys are interviewing this person. Like I actually know this person, and people within a company actually speak. So that's great. So we're gonna go into like a short segment of actually trying to like give a couple of practical advice that maybe isn't like cookie cutter, like you need to do this, but practical things that like we've done in the past that have helped us land jobs. And like number one, like speaking about the resume, and like for us, we're not in recruiting, but what would you say has helped you, that's maybe on your resume that you think like helped, or maybe that you tweaked as you were looking for jobs that maybe helped you get a couple of extra interviews?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like growing up, I think in high school, they kind of lay out the cover letter and like what your resume is going to look like. And it's changed. It's changed so much over even just like the past few years of what companies are expecting. And it's very different based on the industry. Like tech is very different than if you're looking for like a user interface role or like an acting role or something like that, right? So it's all very different. For me, I would say having kind of a specific resume. I had one for sales. I had one for customer success. I had one for consulting. And then based off the job description, I would tweak it like a little bit, but not too much. Never too much. I would have kind of like my bases set up, and then copy some words that are in the job posting, put them into your resume. That was kind of my approach to it. Kept it really simple. My resume is just 1 page. It used to be 2 pages, I think, and I was like, there's no need for all this stuff on here. Made it 1 page. But to be honest, I was way more reaching out to people, and then when I was actually applying, like quantity over quality. Like have a good resume. I'm not saying give up on quality, but you only have to tweak it so much once it's good.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And I think that I love how you shared that, like you shortened yours, because mine also used to be like this huge block of text and that like nonstop. And every time I would like go to the grocery store, I would add that skill to my resume and stuff like that. But I think that like started to think a little bit more like the hiring manager, and starting to think, okay, what do they care about? What do they want to see? And how can they see that as quick as possible, right? Like if they were to just flip over my resume, are they able to see this? And are they able to know that like, okay, he's really really good at that, and then kind of go from there. That's one thing that that helped me. That helped me a little bit. And now step number two, like what are some things like outside of obviously reaching out to people, what are some things that maybe you've done to get noticed or get the attention of recruiters as you were going through that process? So what would you say there?
Yeah, I mean, when I was, when I was looking for this job, and had very little to do at the time, I was writing certifications for things that I was interested in. Which was a great way to kind of separate yourself from the other people who were graduating at the time. Because everyone, I mean, most people are applying with a degree. Most people, at least some people have like some internship experience. But trying to separate yourself from that pack was difficult. So I was writing things and writing exams that I thought other people would take notice in.
Yeah.
And that definitely helped for me. Besides that, I would highlight, there was one experience that I had coming out of university that was just way better than anything else I had on my resume, and it took up like a third of it. I had like the stats on there. It was bolded. Like I wanted that to be the first thing that
people noticed.
Because the stat is something crazy. Like your resume gets looked at for like 7 seconds before they make a decision or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I don't know what it actually is, but it's something like that. So like have your best thing the most easily, the most easy to read.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so can you speak like there, I kind of want to talk about both those things, but first of all, when you speak about like some of the certifications, maybe because I'm a big fan of like people thinking, because with this whole generation of people just going to university just for the sake of going to university, I'm not the biggest fan of university just because I think that people just go and they think that like, oh, just having the piece of paper is going to get me there.
Right.
While it should be about like developing a skill that makes you marketable, right? And like that's really how it should be about. And what has allowed you to have success is because you got certain skills and you didn't know exactly what you were going to be doing. So how would you kind of decide like, oh, I'm going to do this certification versus this one? And like how would you like pick and choose or decipher there?
Honestly, the big thing is when you're trying to write a certification, do something you're interested in. Or it's so hard to keep yourself motivated. Yeah. I remember I tried to write some like Google, I don't even know what it was, like ad ones or something like that. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And I never finished it. So that would be my first advice is do stuff that, is actually, that you're actually enjoying. The second thing is, I mean, do free ones or do ones that don't cost very much money. Yep. I was interested in learning Salesforce, so I wrote my Salesforce. I wrote 3 Salesforce certifications. They were, I think I found like a discount code or something like that. Yeah. So they're like $100, so not too expensive. So, and that's what I was interested in. And these tech companies, and not even tech companies, like financial companies, all of these companies want you to learn their product or their way of doing things. And a lot of them offer a certification at the end of it. So if you can do those and position yourself as coming into an entry-level role, already knowing the things that, people are going to train you on anyways, that just puts you at a huge advantage.
No, that's really good. And the second part you spoke about was highlighting what actually you're really, really good at, or like where you've found the most success. And I think that we spoke about it a little bit earlier, right? With when you go into a certain job, like maybe you doing really great at that job isn't the only thing you need. Making sure that the right people notice at the right time, so that like your name is in the right spot is also an important thing, right? And it's also an important thing as you're writing your resume or you're trying to get noticed by recruiters on LinkedIn. So how would you like? I guess like how do you make one side like one part of your experience like take up a third of your resume without necessarily completely discounting everything else?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more so. I mean, that's another thing I should probably touch on in your resume is having kind of hard statistics of what you did.
Especially in sales.
Like in really anything, like even in tech, in general, just having those numbers down and recording them like as you go. I keep all mine even like now as I'm working. And having those kind of highlighted. So I definitely had some stuff there that I leaned on heavily, and that's kind of how it took over a big part of my resume, and then there was certifications and stuff. I'm happy to share like the template to my resume too, if that's something people would be
I think
interested.
we can maybe just toss it on the screen or something like that. Or yeah, we'll if
We can
you're
post
happy
it.
to share, we can put it in the description. But how, like, I guess so. I'm thinking about how do you decide like what should be highlighted to? Because I'm thinking from my standpoint, I think the output is also always going to be more important than the input, right? So we work in sales. Let's say a lot of people make phone calls, and I can be like, oh well, I'm the most top one phone. I'm the top one caller in my company. I think that that's probably going to have a little bit less weight than like, okay, well, I'm number one, producing person in the company. Um, from like, and that's kind of sad because one of them shows that you're clearly putting in the effort, and the other one shows that you're delivering the results. But the result part is probably going to be a little bit more important from like a showing your skills standpoint.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, I agree with that 100%. Try to focus on the results. Try to focus kind of on the specific actions that you performed as well.
yeah,
Yeah, I would try to remove the fluff as much as possible for sure. I mean, that can take your resume from 2 pages to 1 page, right?
Yeah.
You don't need.
Give me an example of the fluff that you had in there, because I'm trying to think of one too.
I don't even know. There's definitely some random stuff. I mean, it differs though, right? Like when I was in university, I didn't have work experience.
Yeah.
I was getting involved in clubs and stuff with student associations, and using those roles as kind of my main bullet points.
Yep.
Which was fine. I mean, that was perfect at the time. That kind of gives you a head start on the experience that you need for an actual job. But now it's like I don't need that anymore. It's not important. It might be like one line on my resume.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, kind of like putting down the side, like with your hobby. Like I can think about like the same thing. Like, well, I had like a lot of volunteering experience where it was just like everywhere on my resume. Where now it's just, I still want it to be highlighted that, this is something I care about. It's important to me. I want it to be on my resume that like this is who I am as a person. But at the same time, from like a standpoint of like a hiring manager actually caring about something, that's probably not going to be their top priority. So
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. How do you prepare for an interview? Okay, now you're at the point where you've done all the great job. We've leveraged like social media. You ever use any other social media other than LinkedIn? Don't lie to me. I know you do.
I mean, I haven't. I'm big on TikTok. No, I'm not. I do, but for my job search, I don't think so. I'm trying to think. Not really. Do you?
Not from. Well, maybe like if I know someone works at a certain company, like I might reach out to them on Instagram. Like if we've been following each other for a while. But Instagram might be the only like social media that I really like actively use. Although I am on TikTok now. Follow me on TikTok.
Don't follow. It's garbage.
Great TikToks. But what outside of that, no. But I know that for like your actual job, like you have used different. Okay, well, let's talk about this specifically because like you pulled something off, which was absolutely elite of a move. Like I want to speak about it. This is not to like find your job or anything, but you were trying to reach out to a prospect. Like, well, tell me a little bit about what you did there.
I mean, sales is fun because you get a lot of, really in any sales role, you get a lot of creativity to do what you want. And I had reached out. I was trying to get in contact with someone at a like very big fintech company.
Yeah.
And she, like, just based on her LinkedIn, you could tell like she posted a lot. She had like articles about how she's like top 100 woman in fintech or something like that.
Yeah.
So I Googled her. I found her on Twitter, and I wrote her a message on LinkedIn referencing her last like 5 tweets. It was almost like a poem sort of thing. It was legendary.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good, man. I remember seeing that, being like, how did he even get to her Twitter? Like, how did that
I spent far too much time doing this. I'm lucky it worked because I was wasting my time. I was like doing all this research.
Because in my mind, I was like, did this guy really like look her up on every single social media to try to figure out? But no, that was like absolutely great. But we were going to get to when you actually have landed the interview. Okay, like now you have a recruiter reaching out to you. They're like,
Yep.
okay, we're setting up the interview with your hiring manager. How do you prepare for that?
Yeah, I think the biggest like misconception is that you can't prep for an interview or like you can't be ready for it, or I'm just gonna wing it and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's like the most BS thing I think to me, because I remember like spending nights. It was me and my best friend. We just hop on Zoom and we would just like ask each other questions that we would need to know for the interview. So for like my recent job, I spent so many hours. I really wanted this job, so I mean, I remember being in the park, like reciting my answers
Yeah.
after a run, just like trying to remember, exactly what I would say for each question. So that's the biggest thing. Just go out and practice. And then I also remember applying to jobs I didn't even want, and I would get interviews, and I'd be like,
Same.
"This
Yep.
isn't
This is a good practice.
like this is
round.
in a
Yep.
different city. I'm not gonna move there. Like this is in the U.S. I can't even get a visa, but I'm just gonna do it anyways." And that was great. Like that's such good practice to just put yourself out there, prepare for it, and you get in a spot. I mean, 5 years ago, I would have been so nervous to do any interview. Now, I really don't think I would be, no matter where. And that's hard. Like, I would have been so scared for sure. I
100%.
definitely like think back to where I was, but practice for sure. You can practice. They all ask like 5 of the same questions. The other ones are probably more specific to like the company or the product. But you can prepare for those and just be super ready and tell stories. Like, I remember having stories ready to go. I remember having like jokes in there ready to go. Like you can prep all of those things to make yourself, still seem authentic, of course, but to make yourself just seem so much better than the next person.
Perfect. I'll go through my joke book next time. But no, I think that is good because like even that aspect, like you're talking about, like we often forget that the person across the room or across the call is also a human being, right? Like so, like a lot of people they hire based on, do I want to work with this person, right? Okay, do they have the skills? Can I teach this person? But also, do I like this person? And like you said, there's so much, especially like in the era that we live in now. Like I mean, I don't do that, but I know that a lot of people, the first thing they do when they come back from an interview, they go on the internet and they write down like, oh, these are the questions they asked me and things like that. So like all this information, like a lot of this information is just out there. And I remember seeing that for like super small companies. That like there's so many of like their interview questions that's out there that I'm like, there's no way that for some of these bigger companies that I know that some of you guys are probably looking to work with, that information is definitely out there. But let's talk more about networking though, because I think that that's probably the most important part of this. And I think that we've gone through all these different things together. Honestly, you can almost like ignore all this if you just are really good at networking. Like I know, some of my good friends like haven't applied for a job in like years. And they're employed. They're not unemployed right now. but like, they haven't applied for jobs and things like that. Like I think from a promotion standpoint, if you're looking to grow within your company, it can all be fixed with networking. We spoke about it a little bit at the beginning with the reaching out to people on LinkedIn. What are other ways that people can network or approach networking if you're like, I don't even know where to start? Like, what do people even mean by networking?
Yeah, I mean, it can mean a million different things. It can mean as simple as just reaching out to someone on LinkedIn and asking if they are willing to chat about their experience. And I guarantee you a lot more people are willing to do that than you think. Yeah. I mean, it can mean going to events in person or online. I remember going to them back when I was in university of just like random events are always put on and there's free food and you just walk around and people will want to talk to you. People love talking about themselves, like I said. So, I mean, there's just many different things that you can be doing. You could be asking your friends to introduce you to their friends or bosses. There's a lot of things that you can be doing. And if you're not comfortable going to in-person events or, being in the 100-person networking events or whatever it is, like you don't have to do those. You can start small, talk to people one-on-one. I remember when I got on the kind of Zoom calls where I was networking or asking about their job, the way that I would do them is I usually have like 2 questions, maybe 3 questions. Ask them about the role, ask them what like successful people are doing in the role, ask them about skills that you would need, like very simple questions. The biggest tip that I could probably advise for that would be to be overly gracious about it. That took me so far in getting referrals, which I'm sure we can talk about. But I'd hop on a call with someone that I didn't know, and for the first minute, I would pretty much thank them.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, thanks for hopping on the call, here are my questions. It's like, hey, I really appreciate you doing this
100%.
for a new grad or for someone looking for a new role. I know you're busy. Empathize with them, and they'll appreciate that. And then when I close it out, I do the same thing. Thank you so much. It just leaves such a good kind of, what's the word? Like image of yourself that will take you a long way. You'll never know kind of who talks about you with other people.
And I think that also one thing that I would add to that is not seeing networking as this like super formal thing too. It doesn't have to be, right? Like it can be like networking can literally be like you go to your friend's house for dinner and you talk to their parents and you're just curious about what they do for work, right? Like your network is so much like every person in your phone right now, like go through your contact list, go through like everyone that follows you on social media. That's part of your network, right? Like if there's someone in there that you're like, hey, I kind of like it looks kind of cool, right? Like what they're doing on a daily basis. Let me reach out and ask them. Sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they say no, but that's okay as well. And like networking doesn't have to be, like you said, like sometimes it sounds scary to just go to a networking event and spend, you know, like there's 100 people there and you're like, oh, how do I bring value and things like that. So
I agree.
I would like definitely add that to networking as well. But like where can, in your opinion, where can like the networking like take you that like people may not think about, like obviously the referral or like if they're hiring personally, but sometimes I think that sometimes people, especially as young people, we need to like, I don't want to say our generation because I think that every young person does that, but like we get caught up in the like I want everything now and like the instant gratification like as a young person. What can some of those long-term benefits be that like we don't even see like today in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, if you're ever down the road looking for a new job, if you have that network, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
Like I'm not looking for a new job, but if I were, I know that there's so many people I've connected with and worked with over time that I would, you know, eventually be at a point where I don't even need to really apply for jobs. I'd reach out to them. There's so much money in finance and technology and a lot of industries and referrals. Like they get money for referring you to their company. So they're always happy to do it. So I think the benefits of it, I've only seen, you know, just a small bit of it at this point in my career, but I know 5-10 years down the line, it'll help me out a ton.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that hack in a second. Let's not give them too much. We got to keep them hooked. But that is and I like what you say, like how you have only seen a part of it now. I worked before joining like our company now. Like I worked with this like IT consulting firm, and we hired a lot of recent grads and like helped them get jobs like in the especially in the financial industry. And I remember like one of my bosses at the time told me like every single time one of them joins, I always make sure I add them on LinkedIn. Why is that? Because I know that in 10 years, I'll know every single tech professional, or like in 15 years, I'll know every single manager, director of IT in the city. And I'm like, dang, that's stuff like we never think about, especially when you think about like for us, like I thought about this like a couple of years ago. The longest thing we've ever done has been like 4 years, right? Like if you think about like whether it's elementary school, high school, you know, middle school, college, like it's always been like a 4-year stint and then we're out. So like when you ask us to think, you know, 5, 6, 10 years down the line, like whoa, but that's like genuinely what your career is, and that's what like how long you're gonna be in. Even if you're not thinking about like a career as like the corporate world, like your network is with you for forever. Like it's way longer than those couple years, which is interesting. But like let's talk about negotiating salaries for a second. Like how do you approach that, like when you're, especially like when you're new to a field, or you're a recent grad, let's say, like how do you get the money that you want out of a job?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I have at least tried to negotiate, I think, pretty much every salary that I've received. And it's more so not just trying to ask for more money. So if you got offered like 50 grand, you want 60 grand. I never approached those situations being like, I deserve like $60,000. Like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
It was more so set up the value that you provide over other people. So 100%. I would sit down and be like, I appreciate the offer. I think that I am really solid at doing like this. I mean, have this written out and practice it a bunch of times, and then be like, for that reason, I would want $60,000 to do this job.
Yeah.
And have like a number that like you actually want. Like, I actually would have been fine with $55,000 for this job.
Right, exactly.
That's what I take, right? So kind of have like a number of what you would actually want and shoot a bit above that. That would be kind of my advice for that. It's a tough one. It's not easy to negotiate, but there's really no reason not to. Like, if a company is going to pull away the offer after you try to negotiate, that's not somewhere you want to work.
Exactly.
Like, it just makes no sense. So nobody's gonna really, take away an offer that they already have on the table if you try to negotiate.
Yep.
And if they do, that company probably sucks.
No, 100%, man. And I love the way you would negotiate your salary, to be honest, because like it really, at the end of the day, it's about like showing them like, no, like I'm worth more than that. Like, it shows like a little bit of confidence.
And assume you're worth more.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, I've made that mistake before where I just needed a job and I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But in that scenario, I found out they needed me more than I thought they did.
Oh man,
which
come on,
happens.
now you're preaching to the
But that's true. I mean, like, assume that you are wanted even if you don't have the experience, because you never know. They could have interviewed 10 people. They all like kind of sucked. You don't know like how badly they need you, so assume that they need you more than you think.
If a company is making you an offer, it's like they're not going to do that because like they're just thriving and they're exactly where they want to be. Like, they're doing that because they want to grow and there's a gap that they need to fill, and you would fill that gap. So it's important to like for you to go in that like with that confidence and with that mindset that like you're actually really valuable. Like, they need you, like you said, way more than you need them. But like, let's go to this hack that we've been making these people wait for so long of like this actually happened recently to you, which is like, what is the hack if people want the job where like what can they think about it? Like, people want a specific job, but like tell people like what happened recently, like how someone reached out to you, and basically what's behind that, all that.
Yeah, I mean, someone reached out to me from my alma mater and just said, I think it was just over email, and just reached out and said, hey, I'm looking to join, XXX company. Are you willing to have a chat? And I was like, for sure. Found this guy on LinkedIn. He had a great background. And I was willing to refer him because I get a lot of money for referrals. So a very simple process. I know we touched on that. But I guess like if I'm searching for a role, I will find, software sales or BDR, whatever it is, customer success, say it's at Microsoft or whatever. I will copy and paste that role into LinkedIn, search like the geography if it's in Canada, and you'll find 100 people with that exact same role. And you reach out to 10 of them, you reach out to all of them, it doesn't matter. So many people will respond, especially if you're reaching out to people like that are young too and like are just kind of starting their career. They love that. I mean, I love it. I've been working at this tech company for a year and 2 months at this point. And I've had maybe like 4 or 5 people reach out to me. But it should be way more.
Exactly.
Because I'll refer people and I'll talk to them, and because so many people did it to me, I'm more than willing to do the same.
100%. And I think that what you mentioned about the referral bonus is like, don't take that for granted, guys, because if you reach out to someone and they have an incentive to get you in, like now they have an incentive to actually help you get ready. Like, not only to be like, yeah, sure, I'll toss the referral in, but to actually maybe reach out to the recruiter to get you an interview a little quicker, or to spend a little bit of time with you to be like, hey, let me help you prep for the interview. So, and not to say that like it's because Rob is a selfish guy. He's not. But like, now it's a mutually beneficial thing where like, yes, he's helping someone else, but he also has some skin in the game. So you don't have to feel as bad for like reaching out to him.
Yeah.
So I think that like that's the really cool part.
And
about
even
this.
if there's no referral bonus, I would
Mhm.
still take the time to talk to
Exactly.
people, and most people would, just because, you know, like I've had so many people that have been mentors to me, and haven't really given that back in the same sense.
Mhm.
That's also because I'm like young, but as I get older and more experience, I'll focus on that. But I'm ready to do it now
Yeah.
for people. And there's so many people in the same shoes as me that are willing to do the same.
100%, man. Man, this was such a great conversation. No, we do appreciate you joining the podcast. Where can the people find you? Where can the people?
You can find me on TikTok. What
are you posting on TikTok?
Just
got any
dances.
dances coming up?
Got my Jackson Mahomes dances. You can find me on Instagram. I was trying to think of the social media that they use.
Vine and stuff like that?
No. What's the one? It starts with a B. Like the China social media. I used to have it.
The China social media, like Bumble?
No. You can find me on Bumble as
find
well.
him on Bumble.
Anyways, you can find me on Instagram, Robert Kandborg, Robert_Kandborg, I think. Or LinkedIn. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat with anybody.
No, that's sweet, man. No, we do appreciate you joining. Obviously, we'll put all the links down in the description, but we're going to hop off for today because we're going to go do some more fun stuff. Are we? I don't know. But we're going to do other things with our day. But as always, make sure that you go to 1%ofjuju.com, book your free consultation if you want to have conversations about getting your finances in check. Go to my social media. All the links are in the description. Make sure you follow, subscribe, all that good jazz. But for today, you already know. Make sure that you're taking the steps today to ensure that you're 1% closer to your goals than you were yesterday. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, brother.